Like most elders, they grew up in the church. Their lives were very common. Of high standing in their communities was Mr. and Mrs. Lawson. Since children, they were raised to uphold their religious ways, attending Sunday service and hosting holidays. They married young and stayed together and became the parents of two. They raised them well and their children excelled in all they had them do. From the outside, things looked good. At least that's what it seemed. But in truth, they were in great danger, just too blind to see. They loved church, the music, the ministries, one of the few trusted members who were given a key. Mrs. Lawson, Gladness was her name. She was a leader in the choir, and she played the tambourine. She was a favorite. Everybody loved her. When she would cook her special plates, there was never any left over. She was happy. She had made it. She was enjoying her seasoned age. But little did she know that very soon, everything would change. Mr. Lawson, he was a contractor. He was the boss. He was pretty much retired. He didn't do a lot. Out on the job, he was observing his team, and he saw one of his best guys had on these stringy things. During their lunch, Ben calmed him over. He was very intrigued. He asked, "Hey, Shaul, what is that? What do you have on those strings?" Shaul looked over and he answered, "Oh, these are called tassels. It's a biblical thing." Mr. Lawson was puzzled. He had never seen them before. A biblical thing? Will you tell me more? Shaul reads the Bible verse about tassels. "Oh, you're Jewish." "No, I'm a Hebrew, and you are too." "No, I'm black," showing his hands. "See? I see your color and your physical make and how your history matches the prophecy of Deuteronomy 28. Mr. Lawson was shook. He thought, how has this been ignored? I've been in the church all my life and I've never heard this before. "Pops, I suggest you start reading that old Bible and see for yourself. And feel free to call me anytime if I can be of help." After work, they packed their things and everyone went home. Mr. Lawson went straight to his study. He needed to be alone. Hours go by. He hadn't stopped to eat. His wife Gladness grew worried, so she prepared his favorite treats. She walked in his study and placed a plate on his tray, and she kissed him on the cheek. He said, "Thank you, honey," without lifting his eyes, so she left to leave him be. Later, Gladness went in to take his plate. She thought, how strange. He normally eats all the meat, but here it all remains. Ben jumps up and leaves from his study. Gladness knew something was wrong. Ben grabbed his coat and kissed his wife. "I won't be gone long." Ben drove to meet his friend, the pastor of the congregation. He wanted to know if he had any answers for his many questions. In the pastor's office, Ben went down his list of notes and he started to ask his questions. "How come you haven't shared these things with the congregation?" Pastor Hamilton was shamed. He was guilty of suppression. But instead of agreeing to right his wrongs, he was angry and aggressive. "This is my church. I've been to seminary. I decide what my people hear. I'm not going to change my message after all these years. Get out. Don't come back. You're not welcome anymore." Ben shook his head and grabbed his things and headed out the door. Gladness was sitting at the table, waiting for Ben to come home. Ring, ring, ring went the telephone. Gladness said, "Hello?" "Girl, I just saw your husband leave. Him and the pastor had a talk, and I heard the pastor scream." "What?" said Gladness. "What happened? What has been done?" "I don't know, but I did hear the pastor say, 'Don't come back here no more.'" Gladness turned as burgundy as a bee. She was so embarrassed. She thought, what has been done? How could he be this careless? Ben came home, walked through his door. His eyes filled up with tears. Gladness saw his display of emotion and ran to him in fear. "What happened?" said Gladness as she held his face. "I'm so sorry, dear, but we can't go back to that place." Gladness pulled herself away. Her world had just been shattered. Church was one of the few places where she felt like she mattered. Gladness walked away and threw herself on the bed. She cried, Call the pastor right away and apologize to him. Whatever it was you fought about, just please let him win. Ben opened the door and sat near their bed and reached out for his wife's hand. He said, "Gladness, my dear, I'll explain. It'll help you understand." Ben took his time to catch her up on what he had learned and studied, and how he went to Hamilton first because they were old buddies. He told how the scriptures revealed the truth that has been hid away, and how Hamilton saw the truth for himself but refused to change his ways. Ben told her how he warned him about having so much pride and what happens to men like him when the words of Yah are defied. Ben said, "After that, he was enraged, and he ordered me to leave. So I did. I stood up and I gathered my things. I know this is hard, and it will take time to adjust. But believe me, from what I read, this is the best for us." Gladness was mad. She was caught in her thoughts, thinking about the life they had and how it all may be lost. Ben pleaded with her. "What is more important, the truth or your friends? Can we together reread the Bible from the beginning to the end?" Meanwhile, Hamilton was telling lies, and word was spreading. Everyone's phone was ringing. People they have known all their lives were having secret meetings. It wasn't long when they got the call saying they had been outvoted. From the positions they had held for years, they have now been demoted. Excommunicado, to say the least. No more dinner invitations or Women's Day tea. They found themselves alone, just work and then home. The word even spread to their children, who were grown and gone. On the Zoom with their son and daughter, they were trying to explain, but they had already heard the lies from the church saying they had lost their faith. "Junior, Joy," said Ben, "I'm your father, and you know me. I just saw that the church and the Bible weren't teaching the same things. I know it's a shock and hard to believe, but if you read along with us, I'm sure you will agree. When growing up in the church, you learn the few verses that are commonly recited, but outside of that and a few topical facts, we don't know anything about our Bibles. If you're honest with yourself, you know this is true. Did you know that when the prophets spoke to Israel, they were talking to you? We were given the commandments from our King so that he can bless us. These commandments are the way to the set-apart life that is taught within the Torah. Now, I'm an old man and I'm about to sneeze and a cough from the morgue. But believe me when I say, I'm not just talking because I'm bored. I'm getting off now. Y'all have a decision to make. Keep going as normal or start to walk by faith." After the call, their hearts were troubled, deciding which side to take. They knew if they got it wrong, it would put their lives at stake. So, they agreed to study with him and to obey its every command, trusting in the words of Yah and not the words of man. They set an appointment to meet twice a week, and they were going strong. Now, as a family studying together, they didn't feel so alone. They were regaining their true culture day by day. No more unclean foods and pagan holidays. They stopped these satanic things, but it did leave a void. Gathering together with families and friends was something they enjoyed. Ben was on the job, and he called out for Shaul. "Yes, Mr. Lawson, what can I do for you?" Ben thanked him for showing him the gate that led him on this path, and he gave him a thank you gift, and he placed it in his hand. Shaul was grateful, and he yelled, "Hallelujah!" Then he invited Mr. and Mrs. Lawson to Shavuot on Shabbat. Ben was excited. He knew Gladness would be too. When Shaul left the room, he called her up to share the news. Gladness was nervous. She had been on the internet. She saw how hard people were judged by the way they were dressed. Should I cover my head? Can I wear pants? Will they be quick to judge me without giving me a chance? She decided to be safe with a skirt and a shawl. She didn't want to be offensive if she could help it at all. The day before the Sabbath, she cooked up a feast. 2 loaves of bread, lamb, and some beef, and really nice wine for all of them to drink. She knew giving and support was a big part of their culture, and she wanted to say thank you for having them over. It's sundown, and it's now Shabbat. She's finishing prepping and Ben shut down the shop. At home together, they said their prayers and they both lay down to rest. Shaul and his family had done the same. They were excited for their guests. Everyone is up and on their way, happy to celebrate this high Shabbat day. This day is to remember the covenant with Yah, the marriage proposal, the gift of the laws. Knock, knock, knock. The Lawsons were here. Their hands were full of blessing. Y'all can see them right there. They were greeted like family, even though they had never met. This was already a day they wouldn't soon forget. There was singing and dancing, people on drums, people from every nation and tongue, everyone together worshiping the Most High, all as brothers and sisters together unified. It was a celebration. It was indeed, greeting each other as kings and queens. There was a sermon and time to share, and they led every transition with a blessing and a prayer. They loved it so much they hated to leave. They knew they'd be back each and every week. They called their children so that they too could see all these people in this great awakening. People worship in spirit and truth. It was such a beautiful sight that they wanted to come too. It was now the end of this awe-inspiring day. Gladness was so full she couldn't complain. She had saw what it meant to not take Yah's name in vain, and from that point on, she was forever changed.